Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being with us. My name is Shuna Dicks, and I'm a Church of Scotland minister here in Aberdeen in the suburb of Cults. And I'm here representing the Holocaust Memorial Day Aberdeen Committee. And I'm just really grateful that you've all been able to join us this afternoon to help us record this time of reflection. We have a number of people who are going to speak this afternoon, but we're asking everyone, unless they're actually due to speak, to remain muted so that we don't get any kind of interference in the recording. If any of you are here but don't want to be seen in the recording, if you want to shut your camera off, you could do that. And we are going to have a time of discussion at the end of the time of reflection, and that won't be recorded. It's only really this time of reflection that's going to be recorded. If the contributors, if you could just be ready and poised to start your contribution. In between each person, we're going to just have a few moments of quiet before the next person starts. Nobody's going to be introduced. The idea is that everyone will introduce themselves. So that's the sort of guidelines we have for this afternoon. The Holocaust Memorial Day theme this year is Be Light in the Darkness. And I wanted to start with a favourite reading of mine from the Bible, which is particularly popular at this time of year, what we call Epiphany. And it's the opening verses of John's Gospel. Here we read, "In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. From the very beginning of the Word was with God. Through him God made all things. Not one thing in all creation was made without him. The Word was the source of life, and this life brought light to people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has never put it out." We'll hear a variety of contributions today from a wide range of faith perspectives, each of which illustrates the way that darkness has never overcome the light, even in the darkest and the most challenging of times. Our first contributor is Nigel.
Hello, my name is Nigel Dower, and I'm a Quaker who attends the local meeting in Aberdeen. Be the light in the darkness. Quakers believe that there is the inner light, or that of God, in everyone. We need to let the light within us shine so that we can recognize, answer, and nurture the inner light in others. And in situations of persecution, discrimination, and hatred, see this light in all, perpetrators as well as victims. As Paul Parker, recording clerk, that is Chief Executive of Quakers in Britain, said in 2019 on the occasion of Holocaust Memorial Day, we must all learn the lessons from the past to create a safer, better future. Remembering the millions of mainly Jewish people who perished in the Holocaust under Nazi persecution and in the genocides which followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and Darfur must stir us to protect vulnerable communities in our world today. Our Quaker faith reminds us that there is that of God in all people. Where there is hatred, we must sow the seeds of love, reconciliation, and peace, he said. Now, before, during, and after the war, many Quakers were active in many ways to be a light to, and thus bring hope to, persecuted groups in Europe. Many of these efforts were coordinated by the American Friends Service Committee and the UK's Friends Service Council. For their relief efforts, their work with refugees, and for their overall promotion of peace, the American Friends Peace Service Committee and the Friends Service Council were awarded Nobel Peace Prize in 1947. It is humbling to learn of the light shown in so many Quakers, and of course many, many others like them, who risked their lives and safety to help those who were persecuted. Being a light is not just about illuminating the way forward. It is about having the energy to move forward oneself and to inspire others to do the same.
Hello, my name is Desire Katiaba. I was born in Burundi, a neighboring country of Rwanda, and I'm a human rights campaigner. In 1994, 1 million people were killed in Rwanda in what is known as genocide against Tutsis. Soon after the genocide, Rwandans, inspired by the ancient African human philosophy of Ubuntu, which signifies I am because of you are, soon embarked to use that theme to reconcile, to heal, and to reconstruct Rwanda. Rwanda has since contributed to peacekeeping in places threatened by civil war and genocide in places like Darfur, Central African Republic, and other places. Survivors of the genocide have inspired the world to reconcile and to also use their own story to inspire the world for us to stay united despite the darkness we've endured. Rwanda's story is a testament of a people's resilience and also of the power to forgive and reconstruct. Rwanda's story can always help us to move forward despite the darkness we've all endured throughout history. Thank you.
Hello, I am Caroline Cormack, and I'm an interfaith minister and representing the Unitarian Church, who are open to all faith perspectives. And I'm going to quote some words by an American author and social justice activist called L.R. Nost. Here's to the bridge builders, the hand holders, the light bringers, those extraordinary souls wrapped in ordinary lives who quietly weave threads of humanity into an inhumane world. They are the unsung heroes in a world at war with itself. They are the whisperers of hope that peace is possible. Look for them in this present darkness. Light your candle with their flame. And then go. Build bridges, hold hands. Bring light to a dark and desperate world. Be the hero that you are looking for. Peace is possible, and it begins with us. Thank you.
My name is Jackie Weir. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And today I thought that I would share a story that is based back in the times of the Second World War, or just after the Second World War. And this is a story. On the morning of January the 10th, 1948, Marcel boarded the 909 train as usual in New York. En route, he decided to get off the train and visit a sick friend. When he got back on the train, there seemed to be no chance of a seat. But just as he entered, a man sitting by the door jumped up to leave, so he sat in his space. He looked at the man sitting to his left, and he noticed he had a hurt expression in his eyes. He was reading a Hungarian newspaper. They got chatting over the half-hour train journey. The man said his name was Bela Paskin. He was a law student when World War II had broke out. He had been put into a German Labour battalion and sent to the Ukraine. Later, he was captured by the Russians and put to work burying the German dead. After the war, he covered hundreds of miles on foot until he reached his home in Debrecen in Hungary. When he got to the apartment where his parents and siblings lived, he found strangers living there. Upstairs, where he lived with his wife, was also occupied by strangers. None of them had heard of his family. As he was leaving, full of sadness, a boy ran after him, calling, "Paskin Baxi, Paskin Baxi." That means Uncle Paskin. The child was the son of some old neighbours of his. He went to the boy's home and talked to his parents. "Your whole family is dead," they told him. "The Nazis took them and your wife to Auschwitz." Auschwitz was one of the worst Nazi concentration camps. Paskin gave up all hope. A few days later, too heartsick to remain any longer in Hungary, he set out again on foot, stealing across border after border until he reached Paris. He managed to immigrate to the United States in October 1947, just 3 months before I met him. All the time he'd been talking, I kept thinking that somehow his story seemed familiar. A young woman whom I had met recently at the home of friends had also been from Debrecen. She had been sent to Auschwitz. From there, she had been transferred to work in a German munitions factory. Her relatives had been killed in the gas chambers. Later, she was liberated by the Americans and was brought here in the first boatload of displaced persons in 1946. It seemed impossible that there could be any connection between these two people, but as I neared my station, I fumbled anxiously in my address book. I asked, in what I hoped was a casual voice, "Was your wife's name Maria?" He turned pale. "Yes," he answered. "How did you know?" He looked as though he was about to faint. I said, "Let's get off the train." I took him by the arm at the next station and led him to a phone booth. It seemed hours before Maria Paskin answered. Later, I learned her room was alongside the telephone, but she was in the habit of never answering it because she had so few friends and the calls were always for someone else. This time, however, there was no one else at home, and after letting it ring for a while, she responded. When I heard her voice at last, I told her who I was and asked her to describe her husband. She seemed surprised at the question and gave me a description. Then I asked her where she had lived in Hungary, and she told me the address. Asking her to hold the line, I turned to Paskin and said, "Did you and your wife live on such and such a street?" "Yes," Bella exclaimed. He was white as a sheet and trembling. "Try to be calm," I urged him. "Something miraculous is about to happen to you. Here, take this telephone and talk to your wife." He nodded his head in mute bewilderment, his eyes bright with tears. He took the receiver, listened a moment to his wife's voice, then suddenly cried, "This is Bella, this is Bella." And he began to mumble hysterically. Seeing that the poor fellow was so excited he couldn't talk coherently, I took the receiver from his shaking hands. "Stay where you are," I told Maria, who also sounded hysterical. "I am sending your husband to you. We will be there in a few minutes." Bella was crying like a baby and saying over and over again, "It is my wife. I go to my wife." At first I thought I'd better accompany him, but I decided just to put him in a taxi and direct him to where he needed to go and paid his fare. Bella Paskin's reunion with his wife was a moment so poignant, so electric, with suddenly released emotion that afterwards neither he nor Maria could recall much about it. I remember only that when I left the phone, I walked to the mirror like in a dream to see if maybe my hair had turned grey, she said. The next thing I know, a taxi stops in front of the house, and it is my husband who comes towards me. Details I cannot remember, only this I know, that I was happy for the first time in many years. Even now, it is difficult to believe that it happened. We have both suffered so much. I have almost lost the capability to not be afraid. Each time my husband goes from the house, I say to myself, will anything happen to take him from me again? Her husband is confident that no horrible misfortune will ever again befall the providence that has brought us together. It was meant to be. Skeptical persons will no doubt attribute the events of that memorable afternoon to mere chance. But was it chance that made Marcel suddenly decide to visit his sick friend and hence take a subway line that he had never ridden before? Was it chance that caused the man sitting by the door of the car to rush out just as Marcel came in? Was it chance that caused Bella Paskin to be sitting beside Marcel reading a Hungarian newspaper? Was it chance, or did God ride the Brooklyn subway that afternoon?
Namaste, everybody. My name is Mahdhav Hindu, and I belong to Hindu faith, and I practice Hinduism and some Christian activities in Aberdeen. And today, on the occasion of Holocaust Memorial Day 2021, and it reminded me of those Holocaust long way ago, but people mostly talk about the Holocaust of Nazi's regime and in Germany and area. So, and light, be the light in the darkness. So how, from the Hindu faith perspective, I describe it as at the end of the day, and no matter what faith you belong to, we have to remember we are all brothers. And Patricia, she's helping me to display my slides today. And in our faith, we say the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That is, one script is met at the top of my head there in the different language. Maybe you think that it's in Sanskrit, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and it's romanized down. And it's the meaning goes as one is a relative, the other is stranger. It's elaborated meaning. Say the small-minded, the entire world is a family. Live the magnanimous task. Be magnanimous. Lift up your mind. Enjoy the fruit of Brahmanic freedom. That I have taken it from Upanishad, Mahapanishad, our scriptures, chapter 6 and stanza 71 and 75, 71 to 75. And I have mentioned in the bottom, in every page that says the footer is a tamasoma jyotirgamaya. That is how in our faith, in Hindu mythology, we say, be the light in the darkness. See, it's been 5,000 years ago, we have been propagating this message, the tamasoma jyotirgamaya. So how we describe the darkness, though there have been many genocides in history, the world seems to either ignore or just doesn't seem to care about the 80 million lives lost during the 500-year-long Holocaust of Hindus, Buddhists, and Sikhs and Jains that last 1000 AD to 1525. This slaughter of millions of people occurred over regular periods during many centuries of Arab, Afghans, Turkish, and Mughal rule in Indian subcontinent. The next slide, please. Yeah. And we say, we believe in that we have the lights propagating by our saints. There are many gurus, many lamas, and saints emerged during these dark times. Sikh Guru Nanak, Buddhist Bhikkhu Dalai Lama, Hindu Holiness Shankaracharya, and they are among those who led the world from darkness to light. Another slide. And so I have mentioned the pictures here, representative pictures. So we say, that's why in our perspectives, we say the Paropakara Punyaya Papaya Parapidana. This is how it is said. Hurting others is the sin. Helping others is meritorious. So this leads us from darkness to light. So lead me from the unreal to real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from this is how we propagate the message from the perspective of Hinduism. And so we talk about Holocaust today, and our concentration goes to the Holocaust that happened during the Nazi periods, and especially in the World War time, 1939 to 1945. But there were lots of Holocaust happened in the world during those regimes, Mughals, Arabs, and we suffered from that. So millions and millions of people were killed, but many saints were there who propagated the message of life. Thank you very much.
Shanti. A greeting from the Brahma Kumaris, who are a group who meditates and the Raj Yoga way. We are a global community, and light is a very important aspect of our belief. We believe that light is represented by the soul, the being of light, and that the supreme is light. And so I can see light as luminescence, as giving that brightness, that light that dispels the darkness. But also for experiencing that light, I need to become light, which means weightless. I need to let go of the sorrow. And so I would like to take you into a meditation that was given by Sister Genti, who is the European director of the Brahma Kumaris with the main seat in London, on the theme of being the light in the darkness, and giving us a guidance into how I can become light. Sit comfortably and experiment with your thoughts. Your thoughts in the center of the forehead, where there's the seat of the soul, the being of light, the eternal one. I feel the light shining within, the inner being. The being that I am is a being of light. I, the soul, in this awareness of who I am, begin to shine. My thoughts move to the divine, the supreme, the source of light, the source of truth, the source of love. And in the presence of the supreme, the light of love reaches the world. The power of God's love heals. The power of God's love energizes. The power of God's love purifies. The power of God's love allows the soul to shine. The power of God's love spreads out into the world, igniting hope in human hearts. God's love reaches out and touches nature. Nature returns into a state of harmony through the power of God's love. God's love reaches out and touches all types of life, so that all life is safe and secure. God's love transforms the world so that a new day may begin. A world of truth, a world of love, a world of harmony. I stay connected to the source, to the light of love, the light of truth. And in the awareness of God's love and light, I'm aware that I have become light. And that light spreads into the darkness. And the light of the ignited lights spreads in the world, and darkness turns to light. Om Shanti. So in the Brahma Kumaris, we understand that an awakened light, an awakened soul, has that light shining through the eyes, through the face, and from soul to soul, we are the ones who are going to help together in with all the different faiths, all those who have awareness, change darkness into light. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Hello, my name is Alessandra Jew, and today I'm representing the Jewish community with a poem from Primo Levi. I work at the University of Aberdeen as a lecturer in the history of the Middle East and also Jewish history. The poem I chose is from Primo Levi and is somehow also coming from my cultural background, which is Italian. And I think today is also important to remember what happened to the Italian Jews during the Holocaust. Reveil from Primo Levi, January 11, 1946. In the brutal nights, we used to dream, dense, violent dreams, dreamed with soul and body, to return, to eat, to tell the story. Until the dawn command sounded brief, low, was touch, and the heart cracked in the breast. Now we have found our homes again. Our bellies are full. We are through telling the story. It's time. Soon we will hear again the strange command, was touch. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mirela and I come from a Bosnian Muslim family. And like Alessandra, I work at the University of Aberdeen now. Today I'm going to read you short passages from a book from a lady called Jasmina Dervisevich Cesic, and the book is called The River Runs Salt Runs Sweet. So many people have heard of Srebrenica, but maybe not as many have heard of Visegrad, which was one of the first cities to fall under Serb Bosnian occupation, where most men were either killed or elderly were put into concentration camps. She talks towards the end of the book about forgiveness and light. She had lost her husband to the Bosnian Serbs, and during that time when he was murdered, she also lost her limbs and had undergone many surgeries to end up in the United States of America. A year after that, my father was released from the concentration camp, and he rejoined my mother in Visoko. He had been tortured. I will say something more about that below. For a few years, the river of our lives ran salt and bitter. Or another way to think of it is to say that we were swept along through dangerous rapids. The two men I loved most in the world, Taib and Sulyo, both died. The current held all of us down on the river bottom for a long time, and not all of us were permitted to rise again to the light. But the calm after a rapid is sometimes the sweetest and brightest water. There is so much in my life that I am happy about now. I never thought I'd fall in love again after I lost Sulyo, but day by day, life renews us. In Boston, I met Enes, a refugee from a small Bosnian town, and we were recently married. The doctors tell me that I can still have children. I feel like the whole world is mine. I have good friends in America, people who have helped me to get settled here. I go out with friends, study, play games, and listen to birds singing in the morning. In Boston, no artillery shells fall on the city. No enemy on the edge of the city is trying to grind the life out of us. Children don't have to worry about snipers. And then she talks. The people who have helped me are so numerous. Some of them were powerful and important men like Senators Biden and Kerry. Some were not much different from your most ordinary neighbors, like the truck driver in Germany, or Abia, the woman who helped me across the airport corridor, or the many people who opened their hearts and homes to refugees, to strangers. There is a saying that I've heard in America, God helps those who help themselves. God tells us the same thing in the Quran, help yourself and I will help you. So even though it is true that the generosity of strangers sustains me, it took my own efforts too. God and all those helpful strangers could only meet me halfway. I had to make the first step. Finally, I think I have learned some things about wounds and how they heal. Operation by operation, surgeons have done reconstructive work on my legs. Bit by bit, they work better. With time, they're healing. But it didn't happen overnight. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Bhikkhu Thitadhammo, and I would like to speak about this solitary war that survivors and descendants of people who have gone through genocides such as the Holocaust and all the other terrible atrocities throughout history have to fight. It is a solitary battle because there is not a whole lot of people that can really understand the pain that you have gone through, because there is no frame of reference for most people. And this is why I think it's important to treat history not as a series of events or lists of names, but as individual stories of choices and emotions of normal people going through extraordinary suffering, both the victims but also the transgressors, because we must understand what drives a person to commit such acts of horror, and how does a victim walk away with such a burden of memory. Can the Lord even ever be lightened? By understanding the atrocities of the past in this way, maybe we can prevent these things from happening again. And this is becoming evident Now, when we look at the news all over the world, that we need as many tools in our arsenal as possible. We nearly saw the most powerful nation on earth fall into the hands of fascists and white supremacists. And we see increases in hate crime and hate symbols, because Nazism did not unfortunately die with Hitler. It's still a very real threat, and it is gaining followers through the internet. Any student of history knows that it wasn't Hitler that invented this hateful ideology. It was around for hundreds of years in Europe, anti-Semitism. It's because stereotypes and false beliefs were integrated into a mythology that painted Jews as this dangerous other. This led to countless pogroms and inquisitions, mass murder that was justified through dehumanization. And this mythology is still alive today, and is more widespread than ever. It is running rampant through social media and message boards, through the spread of memes and conspiracies that disguise themselves as harmless humor and a cure for disaffected youth. I wish I had a better understanding about this matter and an answer to this disease of racism. But all I have is a very, very faint idea of what motivates people to fall into hatred and delusion, and an even fainter idea on how to be free of them. And this is mainly through meditation, not academic research. So forgive me if you do not find my case convincing or even relatable. I will describe a meeting with a victim of another genocide on the other side of the world, through whom I gained a measure of faith in the idea that we can recover from the trauma of genocide. In the summer of 2012, I met a truly extraordinary human being, a person who has seen so much pain and suffering, but still decided to show the world only kindness and compassion. She was a Buddhist nun by the name of Ajahn Bodhipala. I attended a meditation retreat run by her at Amaravati Monastery during a particularly tumultuous year of my life as a non-believer, looking for answers on the meaning of life. I did not obtain all the answers I needed, or even a quick fix, because it's not a quick fix. But what I did receive was the inspiration to be a kinder and more forgiving person. But most importantly, that cultivating these qualities is essential for peace and happiness. And also that this difficult task requires tremendous effort to accomplish. During our Dhamma talks, she talked quite candidly about her life, and it was no fairy tale. She was born in Cambodia and was in her 30s when the Khmer Rouge, led by the dictator Pol Pot, took over. This was a regime barbaric in its brutality, killing over 2 million Cambodians, including little toddlers, in order to create a perfect society. Part of this statistic was Venerable Bodhipala's family, including her loving husband. The couple had 2 children and worked for the American embassy in Phnom Penh, making them a target. The family managed to secure a way out of the coming genocide. But as Ajahn vividly described, they were on the last helicopter out of Phnom Penh as the Khmer Rouge was taking over. And there was no space for both the husband and wife and the 2 kids. She recalled how her husband told her to leave and find a better life for their kids, and stayed behind awaiting his fate. She recalls how she saw him standing there as she flew to safety. I can't imagine the terror and the sorrow that she must have felt in those last few glimpses of the love of her life as she flew away to safety. In the US, she faced life as a refugee, a single mother of 2 children on a foreign land. And she did this with grace and perseverance, obtaining a degree in engineering, and worked hard to support her children. It was a will to survive and the promise made to her husband to stay strong that kept her going and kept the inner demons at bay. But once her work was done, once her children were educated and their future was secure, these demons, they came back. And they came back with a violent fervor, crushing her with indescribable pain, a pain she could not bear, the loss, the injustice that was done to her family and her people. She found her way to Buddhism, and meditation that helped her cope and eventually led her to find within her heart the strength to forgive her murderers, her husband's murderers. And she even described how she went to meet the general who was the main character behind this tragedy. And even after she became a nun, she described deep bouts of depression, but she endured and she persevered and she found victory in freedom. At the time, I could not understand how forgiveness at this level could even be possible, because my own family had suffered under a brutal regime that tortured and murdered with impunity in Sri Lanka in 1989. The very history of my people is shaped by genocidal actions of the British Empire, when they killed every male over the age of 12 in the eastern part of my country following a rebellion in order to destroy our spirit, and it worked. But this was nearly 200 years ago, but the impact is still felt in my nation. In this defeated outlook that my people have, in the ethnic tensions that led to a brutal civil war, even in our tendency to hate ourselves, the color of our skin, and the inferiority complexes that some individuals have. This is not a unique experience. It is something that is shared in all parts of the British Empire, in Asia and Africa. And my entire childhood was shared by fear and desire for vengeance. I had fantasies of killing those who killed my uncle and put a death warrant on my father's head. It was an environment filled with so much fear and hate, and it does not lead to peace. And naturally, my life was one of turmoil and conflict. This was a manifestation of intergenerational trauma that many societies which have suffered from war and tyranny can relate to. The fact that hate only creates more hate is evident when looking back at my own life and thinking of the courage that Venerable Bodhipala had in forgiving her enemy, and the courage that Lord Buddha had in forgiving King Vidudaba, who committed genocide against his own people, the Sakyans. I have seen Dachau and Auschwitz. The unimaginable cruelty needed for such clinically executed cruelty on an industrial scale is truly horrific, and we should persevere to prevent this from happening again. And the prevalence of anti-Semitism even in this day is terrifying. It is easy to think of those people as monsters, but the fact is they are humans just like us. Only as humans are capable of committing such cruelty. Nazis are not something alien or a freak accident of nature. They are humans who agreed that hate is good and people different from them are impure and subhuman. Every human being has the shadow of this evil within them. Though it is a raging tempest in some, it is only a faint spectre in most. Still, it is a festering wound through which parasites can invade our soul. Parasites like Hitler, like Pol Pot, like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, or the white supremacists who carried out colonization and slavery and lynchings, and all those kings and queens on their golden thrones with blood on their hands and rotting corpses by their feet, turning normal people into frothing beasts. All it takes is a lot of lies that exploit fear, greed, and insecurity. But most importantly, this delusion that we are different, that those people are different because they look different, because they act different, so that they are a threat to our ways, a burden on our land, even though in truth, there is no such thing as our land or our ways. These are just ephemeral constructions of deranged minds. As a Buddhist, I believe that change must come from within, at the individual level, because society is a network of individuals and the environment. If we can transform ourselves into kind and empathetic people, some of those that are linked to us in our network will be infected by this seed of kindness. This is how I choose to make this world a better place. And it starts with honesty towards myself about the darkness within me and forgiveness towards the darkness within others. This does not mean we should be incautious or naive, but to be aware of the forces that drive evil and to excise them from oneself first and help others to be free from this burden of hate. If we ignore these nascent seeds of darkness within ourselves, demagogues and tyrants will find a way to make them bloom into atrocities, and history will be doomed to repeat itself. I will leave you with the sincerest and deepest hope that all of us here and everywhere can find within ourselves the strength of character needed to uncover and heal these little hairline cracks we all have in our basic human goodness. Thank you.
Mervyn, it's your turn. Unmute as well.
Thank you. I am Mervyn Humanist, a humanist from Aberdeenshire. I've come into this quite late. I did a quick Google search and I found that the themes for Memorial Day were resistance, light in the darkness, and suggested two themes of resistance and justice. So I'll mention both those as I go through. As a humanist, humanists are non-religious, but we share the same values of many religions, especially belief in the value of respect, love and kindness towards our fellow humans, values that we believe are integral to the human psyche. And to be human is in essence to be humane. The humanist stance in everyday life is mainly to support human and civil rights, including the freedom to have and to practice a religion of choice, and also the freedom to live without any religion, all within democratic systems of government. On the theme of resistance, I'll give you an example from what I think is a quite unusual source. When I heard it, was well taken aback. A friend of mine who's now in his mid-90s living in London served in the British Army in Palestine in the mid-40s, between 45 and 47, when the State of Israel was founded. And he was posted on the beach, the Eastern Mediterranean beach, in what is now modern day Israel. And his orders were to shoot anyone trying to get off the boats, which were full of refugees coming from Europe to sanctuary in Israel, as it is now. And he was on the beach. I don't know the exact detail of it, but he said he couldn't bring it in his heart to shoot anybody who was basically skeletally thin, carrying little bags of possessions and dressed in the poorest of clothing. So he failed his duty and he let these people go up the beach and find sanctuary wherever they could. So that level, his little bit of personal resistance no doubt saved many lives. And I thought it was a tremendous personal example, very courageous given what might have happened to him for disobeying orders. But on to the Holocaust itself. I first became aware of the Holocaust when I was about 13 in about 1965. A friend of mine lent me a book called Medical Block Buchenwald, a book that shocked me to the core and still does. It detailed the cruelties and atrocities that were inflicted by the Nazis in the name of medical research, a lot of it under the supervision of Dr. Mengele. Cruelties that were tantamount to systematic torture and murder. But where does it all start? Resistance, once it's underway, is absolutely commendable and necessary. But if we prevent these things, we have to be more proactive and try and nip them in the bud before they get underway. The Nazis came to power through a democratic process, and in doing so, they undermined the basis of that process and established a fascist state. As we gather today here, there is a rise in far-right big man politics across the whole of Western democracies. Authoritarian movements based on similar themes of overt racism based on colour, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, and covert colonialism all exist and thrive. An abolitionist, Wendell Phillips, once said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Power is forever stealing from the many to give to the few." But vigilance needs to be followed up by action. And as John F. Kennedy said in 1961, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And it's maybe worth reflecting on the irony of this today, given what is currently happening in the United States, and is what is really still an unfolding picture and is yet to conclude. As well as Medical Buchenwald, two of the other most important and influential books I have read are Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl and Night by Elie Wiesel, both Holocaust survivors. As people of the Jewish faith, both in their own ways, in the midst of desperate circumstances, pondered and anguished as to whether or not their God had abandoned them, much as Jesus Christ did before he died. Elie Wiesel had been sent to Buchenwald with his father, and who died there in the most horrific circumstances, with Eli in a filthy bunk within feet of his father as he died. And his father was crying out to him as he was dying, yet he was helpless to assist, even to hold his father as he died, else he would be murdered too. Elie Wiesel went on to rebuild his life, becoming a journalist, an author, then a university professor. He also made many long-term efforts to capture, or bring to justice rather, Nazis who had fled to various places in South America, North America, and wherever. And he had a lot of success in that. He became known as the Nazi hunter. Eventually, for various reasons, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and he and his wife then created the Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity. In 1999, he gave a speech at the White House where he spoke of the perils of indifference, saying that indifference and lack of action become allies of evil. He added, in a place where I come from, society was composed of three categories: killers, victims, and bystanders. His plea was, never be a bystander. Humanists urge the same to protect human and civil rights, especially in these days of fake news, alternative facts, and outright lies. For my part, societies worldwide must preserve, protect, and publicize the truth about the Holocaust, lest we forget the lessons that each new generation must be taught. At individual level, we can also take actions. For example, if your religion urge your church to act, as a citizen of the UK, use your vote wisely. As an individual, become a sponsor, or an advocate, or a supporter, or maybe even an activist. Whatever you do, please don't just stand and watch. Thank you.
Suki. Right. Good afternoon. My name's Suki, and I'm representing the Sikh faith. And today I'm going to be sharing the story of Guru Hargobind Rai, who was the 6th Sikh Guru, and the story of Bandi Shore, meaning prisoner release, to reflect upon it in the context of the liberation of prisoners of the concentration camps. So under oppressive Mughal rulers in India in the 1600s, the Emperor Jahangir had 13 years earlier tortured and martyred the 5th Sikh Guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, due to the increase in numbers who had started following the Sikh way of life. The Emperor was now getting worried that the 6th Guru Hargobind Rai was also a threat. The Sikhs were constantly battling these forces of oppression, just as Jewish people historically and most notoriously in 1930s Germany were. Unfortunately, minorities still face these forces of oppression in modern day India today. But back in 1619, Guru Hargobind Rai was eventually imprisoned by the Mughal rulers in the fort of Gwalior in 1619. In the same port, there were also many other oppressed people who had been wrongfully imprisoned, including 52 Hindu princes, who similarly had been seen as a threat by the power they had held in their kingdoms. So Guru Hargobind took his imprisonment as God's will and spent many months held captive, but still made the most of his time by getting everybody to join in daily prayers together, spreading his message of peace, oneness, and equality. Even his captors knew that he was no ordinary prisoner and got to know of his spiritual powers. Eventually, the torment and turmoil in the mind of the Mughal emperor caught up with him, knowing that he had imprisoned such a holy person, and eventually agreed to his release. Guru Hargobind, being the selfless and compassionate soul and upholding his core virtue of human rights as a Sikh, declined his own release, unless all the other 52 Hindu prisoners were also released. The Mughal emperor eventually, but reluctantly, agreed on the basis that only those who could hold on to the Guru's robe upon release could be freed along with the Guru. So the Guru Hargobind had a special robe made which had 52 tassels attached, so that all of the 52 princes could hold on and be freed with the Guru. The robe is still preserved and can be observed in Amritsar today. Upon release, the Guru returned back to Amritsar in 1619 to joy scenes of his devotees. This fell on the same day as the Hindu festival of Diwali, the festival of light, and Sikhs celebrate the festival of Bandi Shore, prisoner release, at the same time as well as Diwali. Throughout the dark days of the Jewish Holocaust during World War II, prior to liberation of by the Allied forces, there were those individuals who showed the same spirit as the Guru showed to save captured Jewish prisoners. Many Jewish prisoners of concentration camps were tactically saved by the likes of Oskar Schindler and others. I'm sure there were probably many other ordinary German families who were also trying to save their Jewish friends and neighbors. The Sikh faith's core message is always to see the light of God in everyone. There are many people, individual beacons of light out there who do see the light of God in everyone across all religions, even more than we think. Such individuals were needed in the past, but unfortunately are still needed today, as the same forces of oppression, prejudice still raise their ugly heads again and again in everyday life. We must all try to be those beacons of light, drawing upon those bright messages of light from some of our darkest historical events, to stand up to prejudiced oppression and human rights abuses, not just to read about history, but to act upon it and its teachings in the context of today's life. We are all one. There is no other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suki. I'm Nisa, Muslim from Malaysia. I'm so happy that Mervyn mentioned about Viktor Frankl, because this is my favorite book. It's my graduation gift, Man's Search for Meaning. So I'm gonna go through some of his quotes. So Frankl believed that humans are motivated by something called a will of meaning, a will to meaning, which equates to a desire to find meaning in life. And he argued that life can have meaning even in the most miserable of circumstances, and that the motivation for living comes from finding that meaning. And as a survivor himself, he believes that in some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, and such as meaning of a sacrifice. And another quote of his: everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And I find this very beautiful because we're in such a difficult time. It's nothing compared to what happened in the Holocaust, but we are all in our own war, in our own prison. And the only way that we can choose to break free from the prison is to shape our own perception towards situation and find meaning in the suffering. And I also would like to mention another quote on apathy, because apathy is like a virus. It's even bigger than coronavirus, I feel. It's the blunting of emotions and the feeling that one could not care anymore, where the symptoms arising during the second stage of prisoner, as he said, psychological reactions, and which eventually made him insensitive to daily and hourly beatings. And by means of this insensibility, the prisoner soon surrounded himself with a very necessary protective shell. And this is where we become me against you, and it's no longer us. So he really emphasized on two wrongs doesn't make a right. And I would like to also marry this to Islamic point of view. In Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah, the longest surah in the Quran, it says, "And we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patient." And another verse that I really, really like, whenever I feel so low, I listen to this surah. It's Surah Al-Inshirah. The meaning is the relief or the solace. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Indeed, with hardship, there will be ease. So in every hardship, the sufferings, like Frankl said, there will be a beautiful meaning out of it if we choose to see, if we choose to seek it, if we look for it, there will be light. And I would also love to link this to my thesis, which I completed in Aberdeen back in 2019. It's on factors of resilience. So resilience comes from both elements of nature and nurture. It could be from personality trait or psychological resources. It could be also an outcome. And resilience is built from real hardship. It cannot be bought and it cannot be manufactured. So only those who are resilient, they are tested. People who are resilient, they've been through hardship. It's like a diamond in the middle of desert, something like that. And with that, I hope that we can remember that we have the power to put meaning into our sufferings, and we have the power to change and be the light to other people's life as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nisa. Appreciate that resilience. So beautiful and powerful. And thanks to everyone who shared your stories and your meditation. Thank you for the invitation. For this guy across the ocean, I'm here in the United, or I should say struggling to be United States. My name is Carl Wilkins, follower of the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. In 1990, my wife and I moved our young family to Rwanda. They're in the center of Africa doing development work. And of course, the tragedy of 1994, the genocide against the Tutsi, when more than 1 million Tutsi and some very courageous Hutu were murdered. My wife and I made the decision that I would stay and try to help, and she would take our children to safety. I had incredible opportunities to work with Rwandan colleagues to try to stand against that genocide. Now I have the wonderful privilege of going back to Rwanda with teachers, with students, to learn from their healing journey. And in 2015, with a group of students, we went to one of the oldest prisons in Rwanda. And I was shocked when they brought some prisoners to talk with us. Excuse me. When they brought some prisoners to speak with us, to find one, well, actually, I didn't recognize him. When he said his name, my head snapped to attention, and I asked some questions, and I found out that this was one of the men who was leading a killing squad during the genocide. We had interacted more than several times, and they estimated that his gang had killed perhaps more than 2,000 mothers and fathers and children. I was so overwhelmed. I could barely get out of that prison. That evening, as I was talking to my wife back in the States, she said, "How was your day?" You know, this joyful voice. And I said, "It was horrible." I tried to communicate to her just the overwhelming waves of nausea as the traumatic memories. I mean, it's not like I hadn't talked about it, but being in the presence of this man had triggered something that I just, you know, I was in tears, and there was a lot of quiet, and she's an excellent listener. And I finally said, "I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight. You know, I just felt so messed up. I didn't know how much anger there was inside of me that triggered by this event." And then I remembered, and I go, "Oh yeah, I had 5 things that I had worked out since the genocide. When I would get knocked flat, these are 5 things I believed about God." And I would just start reciting them. And so I started here, you know, with Teresa. They're just sitting on the floor in my guest room saying, "You know, God is always with me. God takes great delight in me, not because of what I do or don't do, you know, because I'm God's child. And God's love calms my heart, often through music. And God has everything I need for every situation. And together we're going to make it, even if I die. And God's my shepherd. God's my redeemer." And then it clicked. You know, if these 5 things I believed were true for me, they had to be universal, hey? And which meant that they had to be true if he chose for Gregoire. And so over the next year, I actually started substituting Gregoire's name for mine. And at the beginning, it was pretty easy. You know, it's kind of easy to say God can be with anybody. But number 2, I was like, are you kidding me? Because I still had those old pathways of God's delight being connected with our behavior, instead of the fact that I believe it's connected with the fact that we're God's children. That reframing process went on for a year. And we don't have enough time today for part 2 of the story, when I got to meet Gregoire again. But with this theme of light in the darkest, one of the darkest darkness that I've ever known has been about anger and bitterness. And the journey to get free from anger and bitterness sometimes seems endless and unbelievably slow. But in the return visits that I've been able to have to Rwanda, I've learned a lot about this idea of reframing, of not defining people by just one thing, by their worst action. And then every time we see them, you know, fire that pathway in our brain, but to look beyond the harm they did, which doesn't minimize it, which doesn't make it okay by any stretch of the imagination, but it can set us free from the prison of only being focused on the harm and the evil, which we can't ignore, because, you know, we've got to proactively stand up against that. But this calling, I think, to look beyond the harm, to go deeper, is a universal calling. Reconciliation may not be universal, but to get free from this anger and bitterness, I think is a universal invitation. And we all find our different ways. For me, it's experiencing the unconditional love of God. And for others, we find our way to reframe not only ourselves, but I think to reframe the other and get past this trap of one thing thinking. So thanks so much. Wish you all the best.
Audrey, it's your turn. You unmute, please.
Oh, they've muted it.
They've muted
Thank
it.
you. Sorry about that. It wasn't under my control.
Thank you.
Well, it's been really wonderful to see such an assortment of people and to realize, in accordance with the Baha'i principles, all humanity is one. We have the same concerns, and it's really been lovely. And I've just got a very short piece to read to finish with. This is from the writings of Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. And it's to stress the importance of the education of children, because the children are the next generation and the future of the world. And depending on how we bring them up and what they go on to do, the future rests with them. So every child is potentially the light of the world, and at the same time, it's darkness. Therefore, must the question of education be accounted as of primary importance. From his infancy, the child must be nursed at the breast of God's love and nurtured in the embrace of his knowledge, that he may radiate light, grow in spirituality, be filled with wisdom and learning, and take on the characteristics of the angelic host. Abdul Baha. Thank you. What do we now?
Have you finished?
No, it's.
Oh, somebody's taken over the main screen.
I'll go over muters. Can I mute us? No. There's another quote come up. Don't hear me. I don't know what.
The sound is not coming, Patricia.
Okay, I can hear, I can see, I'm fine here. Need me to share the screen again? These children in days of sunshine, how much more do they need me in days of darkness? Jane Haining, Budapest. If only we're brave enough to see, only we're brave enough to be light. Amanda Gorman. Messages for us to take away this evening, along with all the others we've heard from each of our speakers. We're so grateful to you all for what you've done for us.